Hi, Ted. How are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. You hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm just waiting for people to join. Danny will be joining in a minute as well. See, Benedict has got his hand up. Is he one of your team or is he just an enthusiastic audience member?
Very enthusiastic.
Oh, he's taking his hand down. Cool. Yeah, so we'll just give it a couple of seconds for people to join. Like I said, Danny will be joining us as well. How are you anyway, Ted? Okay?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you, Mina?
Yeah, good, thank you. Busy as always. And we recently got a puppy, so lots of puppy watching and telling off.
Incredible.
Yeah, otherwise good.
Just this morning when I was trying to sleep at around 7 a.m., my two beagles were like chasing a rat in the garden. So puppies, they're adorable, but at the same time, they can disrupt your life to an extent. You'd be surprised.
Definitely. He sleeps quite well, touch wood, but obviously we can't walk him or anything yet because he's too small. He's not vaccinated. So you're not allowed to walk him until they're vaccinated, which isn't happening until next week. So he's got all this energy and we can't really get him out of the house to wear him out just yet. So as soon as he can walk, I think it'll be a bit easier and get some of that energy out on walks. So you've got Danny now. Hi, Danny.
Hello, Alice. Ted, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Ted, is your name Edward?
No, it's not Edward. It's just Ted.
In the UK, Ted's short for Edward.
Oh, is it? No, Ted is just Ted in this case. Probably because I'm not from the UK.
Yeah, it's never crossed my mind before. But that's right, isn't it, Alice? Ted isn't short for anything else. It's just Edward, right?
Yeah, I think it's short for Edward. But I think these days, particularly for like younger babies, Ted and Teddy are popular names on their own now.
Well, there you go. Ted's a young man compared to me.
I think historically it would have been short for Edward, but yeah, Ted and Teddy are what I think some people actually nickname Theodore a Ted sometimes.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a very old-fashioned name.
Coming back.
It's really popular, but for younger, like I say, for younger children, like like toddler sort of age at the moment, Ted and Teddy are quite popular, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure all 37 people. Sorry, my Discord is glitching at the moment. 1 second, I'm just trying to fix it. Yeah, so we've got Ted in the house from Daylight. Yeah, you. How was the? I think you've been through sort of like 2 white papers. You've launched. You've got some things coming up. So we've got a lot to cover in terms of maybe you guys, maybe doing a reintroduction to you guys as well, Ted. But I am personally just curious. I kind of joke that setting up a crypto project is like selling your soul to the devil. You only know you've done it after you've done it. And but yeah, so I'm curious on how you're finding your journey and how's the learning curve. But you've obviously run many crypto projects before, so maybe for you it's all plain sailing. But I'm just curious how you're finding the transition from. I remember people telling me pre-sale, they were like, it's easy for you at the moment because you don't have a chart, and I'm thinking, well, that's it's really hard because you've got all the pressure of pre-sale and your launch coming up and blah blah blah. But then I found it much harder actually once you've launched. So I'm curious, how are things for you, Ted?
Well, I mean, things definitely have been picking up. We did have a lot of unexpected delays because of our development team, our lovely development team. On launch itself to get out some of the utilities rolling, and then we saw sort of a sudden dip in the price as expected with a lot of the pre-sales where people are taking profit, and then we came back strong to like a very, very powerful point where we are right now is a very good stagnant average that obviously yesterday followed the Bitcoin dip, but we're relatively keeping well, and then we're rolling out new utilities as the time passes by, and we've got some amazing partnerships in the works. We've already implemented a Daylight MDB Plus farm that has largely contributed towards solidifying the foundations of our project as well. And there's a lot more to come, purely because we are in a very elementary stage right now. We are definitely moving and ramping up our efforts. We're lying down low while we finish development during this holiday period that's coming up, and then all of a sudden, we're battle tested and battle ready to drop out a lot of new things in the upcoming year, as well as in the months to follow, right? So we do also have certain things such as our launch pad that is currently being refined and developed. It's going to go on BNB chain and then eventually on the SafeOX blockchain. So there are a lot of exciting things in place. Overall, the community sentiment.
I don't want to throw you off track, Ted, because I've hit you with some questions. They were just light-hearted sort of icebreaker questions, and maybe because I'm just conscious that there could be a lot of people here that don't know you, don't know Daylight. For them, they're kind of starting at day one with Daylight. Maybe if it's okay, if I could just pull it back, maybe just get
of course, 100%.
Who are you, your team? What's your background?
Of course. So I have, for those that are new to learning more about Daylight, new to the project itself, my name is Ted, and I'm one of the founders and the chief product officer of Project Daylight. Basically, my background has been exclusively in private equity and blockchain, as well as a lot of startups before getting into blockchain development, before getting into blockchain businesses. And then eventually I went off on a tangent from actually, doing private equity and management consulting in a lot of the bigger blockchain firms to more of doing DeFi projects, as well as, starting up our own Daylight fund. And then we have, of course, an investment firm behind Daylight that is going to invest in certain projects that launch in our launchpad itself. So we've sort of created this, I would say, multifaceted business model that eventually feeds back into the business over time. So just to introduce some members of my team, we do have Roshan, Nadia. So Roshan's our CEO, Nadia is our COO, and then we have Anthony, who's our CSO. That's basically the top suite. And then we've got some community managers, we've got some developers below us, and then we do have, of course, the infamous DeFi Mark as our advisor. So he's on our advisory board, and we also outsource some of our development to his company Dapt. So that pretty much makes up a lot of the team. Mainly my team has project experience in financials, in private equity, as well as actually Web 2 and Web 3 development itself. My CSO, Anthony, who's also my business partner outside of Daylight, has extensive experience in developing as well as, ideation of a lot of DeFi projects that he has done in the past. So we do have a very solid, well-rounded roster, and we are looking to actively expand our team very, very fast. So in fact, at the moment, I'm looking for a VP of community as well that is going to come up on these AMAs and do them on my behalf. So I have more time to actually work with Mark and his team on product development behind the scenes.
Very good. Yeah, very good. And maybe an introduction then to Daylight as a protocol. How would you sum that up to a new investor?
Of course. So what we branded ourselves as is the first true wealth generation protocol in DeFi that has a minimum downside risk that is fully collateralized. So Daylight is a DEX, is a launch pad, and eventually it's going to become a play to earn ecosystem. So it's a multifaceted ecosystem in a way that has a primary token called the Daylight token, which is deflationary. So it's a deflationary token that is designed to look very beautiful on the chart, that is designed to have this low price. So it works, I would say, similarly to MDB Plus. You can make a comparison in how the floor price works. But at the same time, Daylight also has a market price, which allows a moonshot capability due to utilizing fractional liquidity via liquidity pools and also collateralized assets to back the floor price 100%, right? So the floor price is currently a fraction of the market price. It's almost 2 cents. So it's trading at about, I would say, 4% or 3% of the market price right now. And what happens with all these utilities that we have, such as the DEX, the Launchpad, they're all integrated with various fees as well as mechanisms that eventually feed back into this token. And this token is something really innovative that we've come up with. It's a reward token that can sell itself down in the liquidity pool to generate more rewards, right? So in a way, it's a deflationary token that, of course, the supply doesn't inflate, but at the same time, you can farm it, you can stake it, and you can earn more daylight because we have sort of a distribution system that is recycled back into the protocol on every transaction finality.
Very good, very good. And what was your starting supply, Ted?
So the initial supply was 3.5 million, and currently we're down to 2.84 million.
Wow. And what's your method for burning? Sorry, I'll go backwards. By the way, I don't know the answers to any of these questions, so I'm genuinely curious. Whilst also it's kind of teases out some detail for the community as well. So you started at 3.5, you're now at 2.8. How was that 3.5 distributed, if you don't mind me asking?
Of course. So we distributed an initial reserve to the treasury that would be kept for burning as well as for additional, deepening liquidity in the future. So we've already burned like half of what is in the treasury as a sign of good faith and to, pump up the floor price really fast. So the floor price is up by 80% already since launch. And then the rest were distributed to the holders. And then we have a allocation of about 1 million tokens that was distributed to our reward wallet or reward distributor. So these are rewards that will be given to the community, to liquidity providers, to people that stake their tokens over time in the protocol itself.
Wait, I'm sorry if I missed it. What was I got that there was investors 1 million, and then also just let me try and understand that. So it's about 30%, and how much of it went into the treasury? Sorry, so 30% ish is kind of held by the team, the protocol. Is that correct? Yeah. And then a chunk in the treasury. The rest went out to investors and the LP.
Of course. So there was initially, so some went to the LP. And that I would say is about 10% because we currently have approximately $450,000 in liquidity. So that was distributed out to the LP, which was 200K initially. And then we have the reward distribution, which is 1 million tokens. Then we have the holder supply, which is 1.3 million tokens. And then going to the treasury was approximately 1.03 million tokens as well. So that in itself makes up the total allocation of the max supply.
Brilliant, gotcha. Okay, cool. So you had about 1 million tokens, so about 25 to 30%. Sorry, my math brain is all over the shop today.
Yeah, so we did,
and you've been burning down that allocation that was in the treasury.
Correct. So we burned at least
how much
half.
is left in the treasury?
So we've got about 480,000 tokens left in the treasury. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not really up to date with the latest figures, but approximately that much, which I'm keeping right now to allocate for liquidity in the future, because as more revenue comes in, we want to actually deepen the liquidity so that sells have a lower price impact. But it sometimes is counterproductive because buys will also have a lesser price impact then.
Yeah, gotcha. And so okay, so get it completely deflationary. And in terms of your system, with you've I suppose when you've started with yield. We started, and didn't have yield immediately straight off the bat, and then it took us a couple of months to build Xenia and then launch that. For you guys, you've got yields available for staking and farming right away.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I think we did that was to encourage a higher incentive for those that are there on day one, because otherwise, if we just released a token like that, what I felt personally is that we could just launch it, we could just have an open market trading it, but then there would be a lack of utility for people, to have a bullish sentiment on the token itself. So this is a way of people to, I guess, store their tokens in sort of a stabilized place that is risky, but at the same time rewarding, with liquidity pools, with staking pools, and therefore incentivizing them to continue to power up the protocol while it moves on with development, while new utilities roll out, so that we're in a very, very good position and a stronger position to actually grow exponentially at that point in time.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, I'm just curious in terms of the yields at the moment. Where do the yields come from? Maybe if I step backwards, you've got buy and sell taxes, right?
Correct. So basically what we did was we have a reward wallet with 1 million pre-distributed tokens, like I said, and basically what happens with the reward wallet is it pays out a very, very small, so it's called the emission distributor, pays off a very, very small percentage of that wallet itself to a reward distributor, which then disseminates the tokens into the different staking pools as well as the liquidity pools. And how these tokens are collected back into the emission distributor is through the taxes, right? So the taxes have, I believe, 20% of all transactions eventually goes back into the emission distributor. And this is how we're constantly building up the rewards over time and recycling it back to holders. So every time someone buys or sells the tokens, they're actually contributing to everyone's share in the liquidity pools as well as the staking pools.
Very good. And so, I remember you came and you did an AMA some months ago as well, and there was lots of other things that you guys have got planned as well. So would you be able to take us through those? You've talked about the Launchpad, for instance. I know that you've already launched a DEX yourself. Sort of, what does your roadmap look like?
So at the current moment, we do have a DEX already out. So the DEX in itself is a utility because we're bringing a lot of vetted projects as well as verified projects by us as well as our DAO, and going through them extensively before considering listing them on the DEX. Now, these tokens have a unique swap fee that will not only be able to contribute to their project, but also to Daylight's token, because every transaction buys back and burns Daylight's tokens on the DEX. So after that, we do have, the roadmap is going to be pushed forward a little to after the Christmas session. But then we do have a launchpad coming out initially on the BNB chain to host 2 partner projects that are going to be launching their tokens and doing fundraisers on our launchpad itself. So that will come out in about the first 2 weeks of January, and then we're going to port the launchpad over to the SafeOX blockchain on January 20th when they go on mainnet. But between that, we do have development on a newer token called the Apollo token. It is somewhat similar to MDB Plus, but the utility is not a storage of true wealth or an ever appreciating stablecoin, although it's partially what it does. But the utility for this token is that on every transaction, it's going to be buying back and burning Daylight on the DEX itself, therefore contributing to the protocol. So what we're doing with that is we're basically diversifying, enabling diversification of portfolio within our own ecosystem itself. And then that's something that, our treasury will be investing in as well in order to create some revenue streams, some wealth for the project over time. Now, the other thing that we do have, and this is sort of unreleased in our Discord itself, but I'm going to put it out here, is, my partner, Anthony, he was developing this play to earn utility for another project that he was going to launch by himself. But then, that sort of went under the radar due to the Bitcoin dip and everything. That game is, about 75% complete. So once it's ready, we're probably going to launch it for Daylight and tie it in with Daylight. And, there will be revenue streams coming from that play to earn utility that will eventually feed back to the token as well as the floor price. In addition to that, we are currently building up a lot of rapport. We are looking for an extended development team to continue the development of our play to earn casino with no house edge. So that's probably going to come out in Q2 or Q3 of 2023. And that in itself will be a massive contribution to the protocol itself, because we do take a pot cut. So we're not taking a cut on each player's earnings, but we're taking a pot cut from every single game that is being played. It's going to start out with poker initially, and I hope it's going to be something that completely replaces the whole entire poker night system for people on Discord and gives them an opportunity to actually play with their cryptocurrency and win big.
Yeah, very good. Very good. And we'll move over to sort of the community's questions in a minute. Obviously, you go in your partnership section. You've got lots of different partners. I think I'm trying to think. PTX, I think, is one of your partners. Great friends of ours. You've got obviously ourselves. You're leveraging MDB Plus, which I think is actually it's I'll be honest, it's exceeded my expectations. In terms of how much impact it's had for us, and MDB Plus is designed in a way, if you're from Daylight, nobody makes money from somebody else actually on MDB Plus. The alliance and the partnership network, the way we design the system is that we contribute and we benefit, and Daylight contributes, they benefit. If somebody else comes along, they contribute, they benefit. So it's very much like a mutual where you put in, you take out, rather than somebody is the supplier and somebody else is the customer. So that's obviously our relationship with Daylight and Ted. Very happy about how that pool's been performing so far. You've also, I'm sure lots of people are very interested in your partnership with a pretty low key character in the industry, Brian Legend. How did that come about, and where is that taking you guys?
Of course. So, I am proud to say that we do have a lot of amazing rosters, an amazing roster partnership. And the thing is, Daylight is actively looking for communities and partners that are more technical in nature, as opposed to just exposure, as opposed to just marketing, because we want to be integrating real products and real systems into our ecosystem while also contributing to our partners at the same time. So the thing with Seifu and SeifuX is that we've basically entered their Skyway program, which is sort of a Seifu incubation program for projects that are going to be on their blockchain. And what Daylight is going to be doing is we're going to be creating the first non-trustless launchpad, which means it's a vetted launchpad. It's a fully well-designed, well-engineered, and well-structured platform for projects to launch on our portal, while at the same time driving volume to SeifuX. So we're going to be the first movers on their platform in terms of an actual launchpad utility. And then at the same time, when their stablecoin comes out, which is going to be called SUSD, we're going to port the Daylight token, and we're going to launch our version of the Daylight token on SeifuX, backed by that stable coin, paired with that stable coin in liquidity pools, in order to, I guess, provide additional support and additional volume to their chain. So in a way, we're facilitating every single safe launch on their platform, on their blockchain, which will eventually launch on their DEX. But we're providing a portal that is fully vetted, that is not compromised, and will mitigate rug pulls as well as malicious actors in the space as much as possible.
And how would it do that?
So what we're going to do is, we are in talks with several audit firms, such as Prisma Shield. We are in talks, and we'll be talking to Obsidian in the future to get sort of KYC as well as audit services partnered up with us. 4 projects that will be going on SafeUX, and they will be going through extensive vetting by us. And we also have an incubation program where we advise them on their tokenomics. We provide them with technical as well as development support. And on top of that, we will be providing them with the means for exposure, as well as plugging them and connecting them with various platforms, various portals that they can leverage in order to maximize and optimize their performance in terms of any fundraising as well as a successful launch. So we do have a system in place that is capable of fostering at least 5 to 6 projects per month. And once we scale our team up, we'll be able to handle more per month. And that will drive not only a substantial volume to SafeUX, because you're either pledging in their native token or you're doing a lot of transactions on their chain. But then those revenues from the launchpad will eventually feed back to Daylight. And there is a 50-50 split between the treasury revenue as well as the revenue that we take to buy back and burn Daylight, and also inject money into the flow price itself.
Yeah, very good, very good. And so basically, your partnership with SafeUX is that they will have, so Safe are also developing their own DEX, I assume from what you've just said, and
that's correct.
They've got their own blockchain, and you will act as I suppose a partner that manages the launch pad. And the idea is that the launch pad actually vets projects rather than just being a sort of a decentralized launch pad. And and that's the value add there.
100%. I just want to add something in there, is that when a lot of projects go to raise on Pink Sale or GemPad, I think the biggest issue in my eyes is that these different launch pads, they provide a trustless platform for you to launch your token, for you to do fundraising. And what they do is they give you these KYC docs and audit badges that are complete bullshit, in my opinion, because these are cash cows for them. You got to pay for these badges in order to get them up on your project, to make your project look good, right? So what happens over here is a lot of people place their blind faith in a lot of these projects that are not vetted, that are not looked through, that are not, panned out for the community. Research is not done for the community to invest in these projects. A lot of them do end up becoming rug pulls or failed projects because the team itself has not, attempted to carry on with the idea. The team itself is not implementing utilities behind the scenes. And that's what we want to avoid. So what we're doing on our side is to do research for the investors, to fully vet these projects before they actually have a chance to be listed on the Apollo Launchpad and on SafeUX or the BNB chain. And in addition to that, we do constantly advise these projects on what to do. Any resources that they do need, they could obviously come to us and get it from us. And of course, on top of that, the cherry on top is we do have, exposure opportunities for them. We do plug them in with several partners, strategic partners that we're going to be partnered up with in the future and currently. For example, if Space Token wanted to do an ever appreciating liquidity pool, I would probably bring them to MDB and I would say, you guys can have a talk. You guys can implement MDB Plus into your liquidity pools for additional support in the very long term. And that's how we're utilizing our ecosystem, leveraging our partnerships to do better for the space in itself.
Very good, very good. Now, how would you vet these projects that are coming on, and how? Because I understand sort of like the pitfalls of being financially motivated, but surely you wouldn't be running a launch pad unless there's some benefit for you. So therefore, you also you also stand to profit even indirectly of launching a project on the launchpad, right?
That's correct. So Daylight is run by obviously my team, which is a part of Daylight Capital, which has its own investment fund. Now, Daylight Capital will be vetting these projects individually, doing data analysis, doing a lot of financial projections for these projects itself. We also have a DAO that consists of powerful holders in our ecosystem that have, some of them have been with me on different journeys in previous projects where they have profited immensely. And at the same time, we do have a select council from the DAO to help us contribute to vetting these projects as well as looking into them extensively. So we do have, several talks with founders of these potential projects launching on the Launchpad, what happens, and the reason that, each project gets to launch on our Launchpad is because Daylight Capital, which is the back-end company, will be investing into each one of these projects if it is lucrative enough for us, and if it is lucrative enough for our investors to even go on the Launchpad. And therefore, we do have a self-invested interest in seeing them not only succeed, but also do well in the very, very long term, because we're going to be holding substantial amounts of stake in each of these projects. So it is, a financial motivation for us. It is a financial motivation for me indirectly because I am part of the team. So this really ties it in together. There's a lot of people that are going to say, we're not motivated to do, we're not financially motivated. So therefore, we can just launch projects. We can just help them out because we're trying to do good in the space. But then in all transparency, the reason you would even create a Launchpad in the first place is to make revenue, is to make a lot of profit, because it is one of the biggest profit generators in DeFi itself. You're facilitating a launch and you're able to reap a lot of benefits from it in terms of revenues, Launchpad cuts, advisory fees, as well as investing in the protocols itself that you're helping make successful.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Cool. Alice, have you got any questions or anything that you want to ask before we pop over to the community to see what they've got for TED?
No, nothing at the minute. I think it's really interesting actually to listen how you've made a bit of a pivot. Obviously, when we first had you on, Daylight was looking quite different actually to how it does today. And I think everything you've done is, in the right direction. 100%. I agree with all the changes that you've made and stuff, which is interesting hearing a bit more about it really, because obviously I'm sure you'll know, Ted, that when you are on a project team, you don't necessarily have time to sit in other projects AMAs frequently and things like that. So it's actually really nice to hear what you guys have done and why, given the big changes since last time we had you here. So yeah, that's it. No questions, just good work.
So we've got hardly any questions. So here we go. Here's a good question. So what other projects have you started, Ted, that people have profited greatly from?
Well, I have done a lot of advisory on various projects. Some of them are Sacred Tales, some of them are Padmon, and these are smaller cap projects that I basically helped moonshot in a lot of ways. And I did help selling out, NFT collections, selling out pre-sales, and a lot of assistance through some of my networks, provided to these projects for almost, peanuts in fees, to be quite honest. And on top of that, I do have several on-docs ventures that I have been a part of. Some people that are close to me, some of them that are in the audience have been with me on some of these projects, and that's where they've definitely profited. So there's more to come. There's more projects that I'm currently also working on, and those will be released eventually in due time, possibly launched on our Launchpad as well.
Cool. So no projects that you're allowed to share with McFly.
Well, I have name dropped 2 of them, but I'm gonna keep it to a minimum at the moment.
Okay. All right, no problem. I haven't seen McFly for a long time actually, so good to see you again. He said Scare Tales. What was the other one? He doesn't want to say McFly, so I'm not going to keep asking the same question, and I'm sure Ted's more than happy to kind of pick it up in his own server. Another question. So will Daylight be the only launch pad on SafeUX indefinitely?
Well, Daylight will be the primary launch pad that is directly endorsed as well as supported by the Seifu ecosystem, by the Seifu community, and by Brian Legend himself. Any other launch pad that attempts to get onto SafeUX is not going to be a Skyway partner, from what I can see, and they're probably not going to get the support that we are getting because we are the first ever Skyway partnership.
Cool. Very good. And how did this is quite a big partnership, obviously with SafeUX is, you heavily reliant on each other actually and each other's reputations. How did this partnership come about? Is Brian involved in your project at all?
Well, Brian is not directly involved with Daylight. He's more of a supporter behind the scenes, but one of the audience members and also a big supporter and investor in both Seifu and Daylight, Matt Hatter, if you can see him, made an introduction to Seifu for us, and we basically had a couple of calls, and they liked what we were doing. We actually liked the rebasing blockchain solution. We understand and we respect the idea. We understand and we respect the massive marketing as well as the sales tactics that have been implemented. We recognize the opportunity to be the first movers over there, while at the same time, contributing to the system, contributing to the space, because we know that we do have good intentions. We are also self-invested in making this a success, and therefore we've decided to implement this partnership as a growth, I would say, stepping stone towards the future.
Yeah, very good. And somebody asked, there's always a lot of interest in Brian. He's he's like a pantomime character. It is Christmas as well. So how do you feel about Brian Legend's past? Now, I don't know all of his past, so I'm not, you'll have to, I can't be specific maybe on what McFly means, but yeah, that, I don't know. It's quite a broad question, that actually, McFly. I'm not sure. Do you mean like his childhood, his criminal history? He's as a project leader. If you can just give me a hint, because it's quite a broad question to put at Ted, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, he's probably talking about a lot of the, I would say, warranted or unwarranted projects that Brian has done in the past. I don't have an opinion on it. In my opinion, it's just like a no comment thing for me. I think what's done is done, and what has happened in the past, may take a significant toll on some people, but I see him in the current moment working extremely hard on Seifu, extremely hard on SafeUX, and I gotta respect the hustle. I gotta respect the work that's being put behind Seifu as well as SafeUX, and work towards building something together, as opposed on looking back and then thinking twice about how this could affect our future or anything. Because at the moment, as you guys know, Seifu community is quite similar to MDB's. It's a very, very cult-like style community. It's a very, very loyal community, and they are definitely onto something if they're that bullish about a rebasing L1.
There you go. So you're the same as, I would say. I don't think our community is cult-like at all. Like, to be honest, I think maybe from the outside it looks lively and maybe it feels like that. As a project leader in MDB, like our community is tough, like very critical. I'm not saying that's a negative thing, and we also encourage an environment where we kind of just have to, we'll accept criticism, and we don't try and control people's opinions, and we won't ban people or boot people if if they criticize us or ask very difficult questions. So I think, the peasant said we're a cult of critical
100%.
thinkers. So, yeah, I would, especially feeling like a little bit battered, bruised, and with a bit of a limp, and and like I need a little bit of healing after a tough couple of weeks. I can't buy into the view that it's a cult. Yeah. And if it is a cult, where's their leader?
No. When I use the word cult, it's used very lightly in a way to say that this is an absolutely loyal as well as a very tight-knit community.
I think it's very business-minded community. If I'm honest, I think just like any other community, if the worm looks like it's turning, we've got a whole hall of fame of people that were going to be here forever that aren't even in the Millionaires Club anymore, which is $500 holding, and they held thousands and thousands of dollars before. So I think people definitely think independently without a doubt within our community. But anyway, it's not it's not something I'm sensitive about. People can say what they like, and it's just an interesting comparison. Cool. Any other questions for Ted? You're very professional, Ted. And I'm trying to look for questions to not make you unprofessional, but I feel like your answers are very well positioned, very well thought through. You behave very professionally, and I'd like to get some emotion. I'd like to get some emotion out here. What's your favorite 2 projects in crypto at the moment? Aside from Daylight, obviously.
Well, I am heavily invested. So I'm going to talk about some that are, I would say, rather controversial. And I'm not going to mention Daylight or any of our partners for this, but this is going to be completely outside the box. So there is one project that I am quite invested into, and that is definitely Lend. So for those that have heard about Lend, it's sort of a balancer / curve fork on Ethereum, and it's doing relatively well with a very high TVL. It is run by the notorious Sifu from Wonderland. So that's definitely one of the projects that I am self-invested into, and I do see it's doing quite well. And then another project that I'm actually really liking is Camelot. So Camelot is the newest DEX, as well as one of the largest on Arbitrum at the moment. And the reason I've been playing on Arbitrum is because of the airdrops, as well as the upcoming incentives for a lot of holders on the chain itself. So something really outside of the realm of BNB chain, Polygon, AVAX, and all the traditional chains. I prefer to myself invest in a lot of projects on Ethereum itself because of just because of personal preference. But those 2 are doing relatively well and looking really, really good leading up to the next bull run for me.
Yeah, very good. So, what's you've anyone who knows, there's a lot of like really tough banter, and MDB, us as a team and as a protocol, even with our own investors, is not beyond sort of harsh criticism at times. You've had some skirmishes with members of the community, sometimes fun, sometimes a little bit serious. What 2 projects out there at the moment do you think belong in stay away from this shit?
Well, that's going to get me a lot of heat and criticism, but number 1 I'm going to say is stay away from Cardinal House. And that's just because they haven't treated us well. And then number 2 is probably stay away from Stable Fund V2, because I am still not convinced that they're going to do well in this upcoming development phase of theirs.
You think there's a high risk of loss, which is fine, right? I think if that's your objective assessment, it's not personal, and you're saying stay away from Cardinal House because you don't feel like they treated you respectfully.
Yeah. So I mean, like I've put a hard stop on talking bad about other projects in our Discord completely.
You're not in your Discord now, so we can
go
crazy.
I mean,
let it all out.
I personally had a couple of run-ins with even truth seekers and some other projects around the space that were, I guess, we were just fighting back and forth like little children. So what I've done is I've put a hard stop on anyone criticizing any projects in our Discord, speaking bad about any other communities, because I understand that everyone is striving for a better decentralized future. Some people have financial motivations, some people have other intrinsic motivations. But what I'm advocating for personally within our Discord, as well as everywhere that I am going, even on this stage, is to respectfully, look at the other communities, look at the other projects, basically gauge and see if they're worth investing in, if they are a nice project with a very bright future, And if not, you can always choose to not invest, but at the same time, you don't need to say a single bad thing about them. And that's what I'm trying to encourage within myself as well, to, be self-invested in projects that I like, avoid projects that I do not like or I do not feel have a future. But at the same time, be respectful towards them, be professional, because at the end of the day, I am a representative of my project. I do represent partially the reputation of our partners. If Daylight goes on and says something bad about another project, people might come to MDB and say, why you partnered up with Daylight? They're behaving like a bunch of idiots here and there. And that's what I'm trying to truly avoid. I'm trying to remain professional, remain realistic, and at the same time, be behind the scenes, building good things for our community, building good things for our partners, and keep a very peaceful mindset in this entire stratosphere.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to be as well. And I think I've shared as well through our own journey. Early in our journey, we took Make DeFi better. Sometimes we felt like we maybe we thought we could change the space, and sometimes maybe we got sucked into things that on reflection, you don't, the space is extremely fickle, and there's no point in trying to win every battle. You've just got to kind of focus on your own game, do the right thing. People are going to come along and bitch and moan, and the space can be quite immature at times, and it's a very tetchy time when it's hard to make money. People are very, very sort of like critical. Also, is a really low barrier to entry, right? People can set up a smart contract and a website and a D app, and spin a story and off they go. So it's I think it's just one of those things that you've just got to accept. There was this question came up earlier and I missed it, and I don't want to dwell on this. I'll ask this question and I will move on from it. But do you worry about negative associations that follow Brian that could have an impact on the reputation of Daylight?
Not at all, because what we're doing is we're providing a service and facilitating launches on the SafeOX chain. So there is no direct association between us and Brian Legend itself. There is a partnership and a business strategic association. That's what I would keep to respect. And that's what I would draw the line on the involvement over there. But at the same time, I feel like any criticism towards them is not really affecting us, because we're not, I would say, a direct integration into their ecosystem, but rather an extension on their blockchain itself. So we are a project on SafeOX's blockchain. Nothing realistically should come to bite us in the back. But we will be cautious. We will move very strategically, and we do expect both ecosystems to continue supporting each other, in the very long term. Yes, SafeOX is EVM compatible, Harley.
Cool. I'm back. Sorry, I dropped out, but you were answering a question, so it was a good time for me to have a technical glitch. I haven't restarted my laptop in about 4 months, so I think I need to do that because it keeps struggling with memory. Cool. There was another question that I thought was quite interesting, and it was about Apollo. So can you explain how Apollo works? You said it's similar to MDB Plus, but it's different and it'll burn your core token. Could you explain for us how that works and what the taxes are, and how that helps the floor price of Daylight?
Of course. So, I see MDB Plus and XUSD as well as PUSD. They have something in common, which is an ever-appreciating stablecoin. Apollo is something similar to that, but it's got a higher tax bracket than the rest of the stablecoins. So it's got a 8% in and out tax, and what it's going to be used for is basically 3% of these taxes, contribute to raising the price, and we have a certain mechanism in place that sort of uncaps how far this price raise can actually go on each transaction. And that's something I would say that is innovative, ideated by our team as well as Mark. in this regard. It's not going to feed back to any other token except for Daylight itself. So what happens is that on every single transaction, 1% of that transaction is used to buy back and burn Daylight on the DEX itself. Therefore, every time Apollo is bought or sold, because it can never go down in value, and we do expect a substantially higher volume on the token itself, is that it's going to be contributing directly to Daylight, because buying back on the DEX increases flow price money, so flow price injection, and then at the same time we're removing the supply from circulation. Therefore, this is how it contributes back to it. And then in the future, we are considering implementing a governance on the Apollo token for the Apollo Launchpad itself, and some additional utilities such as tier 1, tier 2 whitelists for Apollo holders.
Cool. Okay. Very good. So a couple of really good questions actually in the chat. So I'll try and get through these because we've only got 8 minutes left. So although you've been part of other projects, what surprised you the most while creating Project Daylight, and what have you taken away as a learning curve?
I think one of the biggest learning curves, I believe, is having the unexpected come in the way, and that's something that we could never have foreseen, right? Because we launched our pre-sale, and then sort of how that was pushed down to the ground. Although we did raise a substantially impressive amount considering the circumstances, is that we launched, and then the FTX debacle happened literally minutes after we launched the pre-sale. We did raise 150 to 200,000 in the first 5 minutes, and then it just stagnated there because everyone literally went into panic. People had funds stuck in FTX, and a lot of things happened at the same time. So crypto was sort of falling apart at that point in time, and we did not expect that. We did not think to even implement any mitigation into those. And then sort of what happened is that we initially planned to push the pre-sale out the first of the month, because that was right after payday. It was before election in the United States, and that would have been a good strategic move. So one more thing I did come to learn is that development is going to have delays, and we do have to manage expectations better. So the next time we are releasing something, I'm going to tell people it's going to come 2 months from now, but we're actually going to over deliver on what is promised, so that if our developers get food poisoning again, we do have some leeway to work with.
Yeah, understood. I have a question. I think there's a good question here from C. Benedict, which is, have you thought about the fact that the Daylight token will be diluted by Apollo buy pressure? And I think at the same time, deflationary is the flavor of the month, definitely, for the last certainly for recent history in crypto. And I suppose your system is deflationary and diluting at the same time, right? Because you said at the start of the call that you have sort of 25% of supply, or more than 25, nearly 30% of the supply is in the treasury, and then that is getting fed out as rewards for people locking up their tokens. So when they unlock those tokens, then on one hand you're burning supply, but on the other hand you're also increasing the supply. And I think there's a question here around Apollo. I'm just wondering what your strategy is there, because you're deflationary, you market quite heavily on the deflationary aspect, but you're also diluting supply at the same time, right? And I just wonder, how is that going to work out?
Yeah, one thing that we have done very strategically is to enable a very scarcity-centered aspect on the token itself, making less available in the liquidity pool and more available in terms of rewards from yield farming. So what this does is it encourages the protocol to have overall deeper liquidity in general, because we are renting user liquidity in exchange for rewards over time, and this is how liquidity pools work. And then in the long term, we do what would be a great managed expectation, in my opinion, would be for, I would say, the Daylight token to have a stagnant volume or a very sustainable in and out volume, but at the same time have a lot of buy pressure on Apollo, because this will actively raise the price of the token with the buyback and burns that are being fed from that buy pressure, as well as sell pressure, because even cells on Apollo will buy back and burn on the DEX utilizing the taxes. And therefore, that's going to be a good thing overall for the long-term growth of Daylight. So what we do stress a lot on is not just deflationary, but also scarcity in the very long term, because as tokens burn over time, as people buy and sell on the DEX, the supply is going to deflate at an incredible rate, putting us in a position where hopefully in a year or two, we're going to see only tens of thousands of tokens available and have the floor price very, very high, have the market price very, very high for a single token, and therefore enabling the moonshot aspect of the protocol itself. So we do stress on something which is sustainability, and that's what we're trying to advocate for in the space.
Yeah. And how big are your ambitions with your DEX? I do have a little bit. I'll be honest. I find the DEX in this industry so cliche. So I'm just curious, what are your expectations, considering there's so many DEXs that are launched and fail, almost, look, your developer built your DEX and he's building a DEX for Truth Seekers right now, right? So, and Truth Seekers were going to use Kyoto's DEX. So, in a really small corner of DeFi, and crypto's a much bigger space than that, there's DEXs getting pumped out like nobody's business, which makes it very, very difficult for anybody to really take on, in my view, the big DEXs like Uniswap, PCS, because it's almost a bit like in a qualifying group. If you've got one brilliant team and then lots of other teams that are quite a way behind, they'll all take points off each other and just make it easy for the number one to progress through the group. And that's my view of what's happening with DEXs. I'm really curious as to what your ambition is with that DEX and what's going to help it achieve that ambition, if it is a big ambition.
That is a very interesting question, and I have a very
developing the DEX, right? I've got FOMO because I don't have a DEX. That's how much everybody has a DEX.
100%. So this is more of a technical pointed question, because there are reasons why we have implemented our DEX, and I'll go over them really quick. So regarding the ambitions for the DEX itself, since we do have a launch pad, we also have a platform to facilitate different tokens launching on our DEX, to provide them with protocol-owned liquidity, as well as a platform that does not sell them down or sell down their liquidity like PancakeSwap does, right? So that's also one of the reasons that we created our DEX, because we understand that if our token goes parabolic on PancakeSwap, which is going to be very beneficial for us in the very in the very short term, but at the same time, when they start selling off our liquidity, it's not going to be really, it's going to have a negative impact on us, as we saw with certain rebase tokens like Titano, like Seifu, where PancakeSwap was able to collect a large amount of fees and then sell them down to the ground. Now, one of the other reasons that we have created our DEX is because we have certain swap fees on the DEX that actually inject money into the floor price, as well as buy back and burn Daylight tokens on the DEX itself. So what that means is that, we also have a small pool on PancakeSwap, and this kind of takes us back to our tokenomics. So we have a sell burn tokenomic, which actually sells down tokens in the liquidity pool, but at the same time burns tokens in the liquidity pool and before they hit the liquidity pool, therefore raising the price of Daylight. So in order to do this, we require two DEXs to make it actually happen, and therefore that's one of the main reasons why we've created our own DEX. So we do have 3 potential tokens launching in our DEX very, very soon that will contribute to raising Daylight's price as well as its floor price, and also giving them control and self-custody over their liquidity, as opposed to PancakeSwap that is collecting fees into their wallet and then selling it down. Because what happens with our DEX router is that we're not collecting any fees directly in our treasury, but it's mainly being used to work our tokenomics and can be customized because they're created on proxy contracts to actually benefit other projects listing on our DEX. PancakeSwap does not have that feature, and then if we were to use their router, we would not be able to manipulate the growth of our token accordingly.
Understood. So is the plan for the DEX to be utility for daylight rather than be a self-sufficient sort of DEX as a standalone business?
So, I mean, the DEX is sort of a business that is, not our primary revenue generator, but at the same time, it's got a lot of potential, when intertwined with projects that we'll be raising and launching in our launch pad. And therefore, that sort of ties back into the business model and allows us to generate some additional revenue, not for us, but for Daylight token holders, because as I said, we're not collecting fees with our router, but we are having the router feed back into the protocol itself.
Okay, cool. So what's your ambition for the DEX then? Where is it going to be from a business point of view? Is it to have a certain amount of volume, a certain amount of listings? I'm just curious what the goal is.
Yeah, so the DEX itself primarily is used as a technically viable product to enable our tokenomics. But at the end of the day, I would like to see every single project on our launch pad that raises on our launch pad have a partial liquidity pool on the DEX and drive volume. So we will be able to, capitalize on this opportunity with different projects to explain how this DEX could possibly benefit them. Because as we've seen with Titano and their switch, they do have a function where you can burn your tokens with every swap. But at the same time, what we've implemented is different parameters where you can actually customize the DEX fees for your token and, for your token itself. And this will largely benefit tokens that list on our DEX, for example. So that's one incentive that we are providing not only to our partners and as well as DEX listing partners, but we do, I would say a year from now, want to see at least about 20 tokens on the DEX and an average volume of, let's be realistic, maybe $400,000 to $500,000 per day.
Okay, very good, very good. Cool. Well, I feel like I've definitely hit you with lots of questions. Alice, is there anything there that's kind of burning in the questions channel that you think we should cover off? With a little bit over time. What were you saying about Kyoto? I was saying that Kyoto also have a DEX, and I forgot that Titano have a DEX, and Ted has a DEX. Truth Seekers are going to have a DEX. My nan has a DEX. I feel like my dog should get a DEX. That's all I was saying. Somebody's going to hit gold eventually if everyone brings out a DEX.
Sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to add.
It's Friday afternoon here. I'm fairly relaxed, Ted. I hope I'm not being insulting. I'm just being flippant.
Can you guys hear me all right?
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. No, I just wanted to add that people are saying about Ted saying avoid Cardinal House. He was asked a specific question about a silly channel that some of the community set up here. So I don't think it's anything that should be taken too much to heart. I feel like it's caused a bit of drama in the chat when it needn't. Just people are saying, oh, he said avoid Cardinal House. He didn't, Ted didn't just come out here and say avoid Cardinal House, they're crap or anything like that. Like, he was just asked a question and he had to pick two projects, right? And
like, come on, guys! Like, it's just look. I'm like 8 months into this now. We just need to stop being so emotional. At the end of the day, people are allowed opinions, and we want an environment where people can like one thing or not like another. And it's not life and death, right? We're on a Discord, so Ted just said that he didn't feel like they were respectful to him. So I put him on the spot and said, name two things you'd stay away from, and he said one for him. He would stay away from Cardinal House. So I don't think. Yeah.
Okay. Now there's drama. So there. Always drama.
Forgot Switch. Tano's got a Dex as well. You're right, Lord Sheegrath. When Dex of Dex. I like Ed. I think you're very polished, very astute. You obviously want to do the right thing and make your project successful, and you're operating in a very difficult space. So I just thought I'd just share that.
100%. At the end of the day, DEXs can become a marketing or utility placeable for a lot of different projects. The reason we did it is for technical feasibility and for working our tokenomics. But in the very long term, we do hope to see, I would say, a substantial amount of volume over there. But I do thank you guys for all the compliments. And we are striving to make the space more sustainable, and I would say more lucrative and safe for investors, if anything else.
Cool. No, brilliant. And I think, I've spoken to Ted about this privately as well. I think, I would love to see, I feel like this industry and the discourse, sort of how discourse is so central to many projects, brings out the worst of the internet, which is we create these little echo chambers where, you can only say nice things in this place, and you can't have, critical views of other things. And if someone does have a critical view, it's like Mortal Kombat straight away. And I would like to see maybe a platform within the industry where people come and debate and in a healthy, constructive way. And I think that's the exactly Admiral finishing. I think I think that's the opportunity of bringing people together, right? And I think that's lost because we create these little pockets of echo chambers. But that's just my two cents on the topic.
100%. Completely agree. I think a lot of people, overlook the possibility of doing good together, and I guess have their own agenda in this space, especially because it is so financially lucrative for new businesses. But something to take into consideration is giving back the most of what you're doing to your investors, because in the long term, it only benefits you greatly.
Yeah, definitely. All right, good stuff. Well, Ted, thanks for having us. And I think we're going to have our first. I don't know. Maybe I have done an AMA on your side, but it was so long ago.
You have.
Yeah. I think I was poorly at the time, wasn't I? If I remember rightly. Yeah. So no, looking forward to coming over to you guys, and Ted. Now I've set you up. I should have done it the other way around, because you've got a good few days to think about some really difficult questions to put me on the spot. So look forward to doing that.
Of course. Once again, thank you guys for having me. Big shout out to the MDB community. Everyone is amazing in here. We will have Godfather and Mina. I'm not sure. Exactly. So we will have Mina and Godfather. I'm not sure if both or just one in our Discord, probably on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm going to lock in the dates with Team MDB, and we will make an announcement on it for an AMA in there. So I do look forward to everyone, over here joining us over there as well. So we will be talking more about the Alliance. We will be talking more about possible future integrations with MDB. And then one more thing that I do want to drop is that we're going to be running a giveaway in our Discord quite soon. So if you guys are up for it, and this is related to the MDB Plus farms. So if you guys are up for it, please do feel free to drop by. But, huge thank you to MDB. Huge thank you to Godfather and Mina for arranging this. And thank you guys very much once again.
Great.
Cool.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Ted.
For joining us.
Thank you. I'm going to disconnect quietly, guys.
Oh,
Cheers.
brilliant. Take care.